So you're ready to go solar, huh? Awesome. Now everyone gets all excited about the shiny panels on the roof, right? But here's a little secret. The most critical part, the one decision that can make or break your whole system, isn't the panels. It's the inverter. Seriously, get this wrong and you've got an expensive, underperforming setup. But if you nail this choice, you're basically building your own personal powerhouse.
So if I asked you what the real command center of a solar system is, what would you say? I bet most of you are thinking, the panels. Duh. And look, you're not wrong. They're definitely the muscle. But they're not the ones calling the shots.
Nope. The real command center is the inverter. I want you to think of it as the brain of the whole operation. It does all the thinking. It takes that raw DC power coming from your panels, does this magic conversion into the AC power that, actually runs your TV and your fridge, and it manages the entire flow of electricity. It's the unsung hero, for sure. Okay, so to make this super simple, we're going to break it down into just 4 key steps. We'll talk about choosing your inverter type, getting the sizing and performance right, making sure everything's compatible and safe, and finally, thinking about the long-term picture. All right, let's dive into part 1, choosing your inverter type. And trust me, this is the big one. It's the most fundamental decision you'll make because it literally dictates what your system can and can't do down the road. Okay, for most of us, the choice boils down to 2 main options, on-grid or hybrid. Now, an on-grid inverter, sometimes called a grid tie, is the simplest and cheapest. It connects right to the grid, super efficient. The catch? The big one? When the power goes out, so does your system. Poof! On the other hand, a hybrid inverter costs a bit more and is a little less efficient, but it can connect to a battery. That means when the grid goes down, you've still got power. So the first big question you got to ask yourself is, do I need backup power during an outage? Now, it's really important not to mix up hybrid with off-grid. They sound similar, but they're worlds apart. A hybrid system is smart. It uses both the grid and a battery backup. An off-grid system, that thing is completely on its own, totally disconnected. We're talking remote cabins, farms, cell towers out in the middle of nowhere. They need a huge, and I mean huge, battery bank. So for pretty much everyone watching this, the real decision is going to be between on-grid and hybrid. Okay, moving on to section 2, sizing and performance. You've picked your type. Great. Now we've got to match the brain, our inverter, to the brawn of the system, which is your solar panels. Yeah, we're going to get a little more technical here, but stick with me because getting this stuff right is absolutely crucial.
At first glance, sizing seems pretty simple, right? You've got a 5 kilowatt solar plant, you get a 5 kilowatt inverter. Makes sense. And for smaller systems, that's pretty much spot on. But take a look at the bigger systems. See how for a 10 kilowatt plant, you might use an 8 kilowatt inverter? Huh? Why would you use a smaller one? Well, there's a really clever reason for this.
It's a pro-level strategy called DC oversizing. It means you're hooking up more solar panel capacity, that's the DC part, to your inverter than its official AC power rating. I know, it sounds totally backward. Why would you do that? But trust me, it's actually a brilliant move. So why in the world would you do this? Here's the thing. Your solar panels will almost never hit their maximum peak power rating. You've got clouds, morning and evening sun angles, heat, all this stuff lowers the actual output. So by oversizing your panel array by, say, up to 30%, you're pushing your inverter to operate in its most efficient zone, its sweet spot, for way more hours of the day. The result? You capture more total energy, especially on those cloudy or not-so-perfect days. Another super important number to look at is the maximum DC input voltage. And for this one, higher is better. A higher voltage lets installers wire more panels together in one long line, or a string. And that's awesome because it means fewer cables, fewer bits and pieces, and less power lost just getting from the roof to the inverter. It all adds up to a cheaper, more efficient system. Okay, deep inside every good inverter is this amazing piece of tech called an MPPT. That stands for Maximum Power Point Tracker. Think of it like a hyper-caffeinated little robot. All day long, as the sun moves and clouds pass by, the MPPT is constantly hunting, constantly adjusting the settings to find that one perfect sweet spot to squeeze every single possible watt of power out of your panels. It's a non-stop optimizer. So the question is, how many of these little optimizers do you need? Well, if you have a simple roof, just one big surface all facing south, one MPPT is probably fine. But what if your roof is more complex? Maybe you have some panels facing east to catch the morning sun and others facing west for the afternoon.
In that case, you absolutely need an inverter with at least 2 MPPTs. That way, each group of panels gets its own optimizer, and a shady spot on one side won't wreck the production of the sunny side. Now let's talk efficiency. When you look at the specs, you'll see numbers like 97, 98, 99%, and it's easy to think, what's 1%? But that 1% is huge. Over the 25-year lifespan of your system, that tiny difference adds up to a massive amount of free electricity. It's energy you'd just be throwing away otherwise. Okay, one last critical tech spec to check. This one gets missed all the time. The inverter's input current. See, today's solar panels are seriously powerful. They can push a lot of current, like 15 or even 18 amps. If your panels can generate 15 amps, but your inverter can only handle 13, you've created a bottleneck. It's called power clipping, and it means you are literally just wasting free energy. It's a tiny detail on a spec sheet that makes a huge real-world difference. All right, let's move on to Section 3, compatibility and safety. Look, an inverter is a serious piece of electrical equipment, so we have to make sure it's not just protecting your financial investment, but way more importantly, it's protecting your home and your family. Any inverter worth its salt is going to come loaded with built-in safety features. Things like surge protection, short circuit protection, the list goes on. But maybe the most important one is called anti-islanding. What this does is automatically shut your system down if the main power grid goes out, and that is absolutely critical to keep utility workers safe while they're making repairs. These are the non-negotiables, the safety nets, working behind the scenes.
And speaking of the grid, compliance is everything. Your local utility company has rules, and they are not going to let you connect your system unless your inverter has all the right certifications. You'll see codes like IEC on the spec sheet. If you don't have these, you won't get approved for what's called net metering. And that's the awesome program where you actually get paid for the extra power you send back to the grid. Skipping this step would be a huge financial mistake.
Okay, on to our final section, the long-term view. A solar system isn't something you buy for a year or two. It's a 25-year investment, so you really need to pick an inverter that's built like a tank and is something you're happy to live with for decades. So this is where you start looking at durability specs. You want to see something called an IP rating. IP65 or higher is great. That basically means it's sealed up tight against dust and rain. You also want a wide operating temperature range, so you know it'll work reliably whether it's freezing cold or boiling hot. Oh, and check the noise level. You don't want some loud humming box right outside your bedroom window. And one of the coolest and most useful features of any modern inverter is the online monitoring. Pretty much all of them come with a mobile app or a web page where you can see exactly what your system is doing right now. It's not just a gimmick, it's a super important tool. You can see your production in real time and get alerts if something isn't working right. Last but not least, let's talk warranty. A company's warranty tells you a lot about how much they believe in their own product. For a home inverter, you really shouldn't accept anything less than a 5 to 10-year warranty. And here's a pro tip. A warranty is only as good as the service behind it. So make sure the company has a good service network in your area who can actually help you if you ever need it. And there you have it. See? It's so much more than just some box on the wall. It really is the brain of your personal power plant. Once you think about the type, the performance, the safety, and the durability, you realize you're not just buying a piece of equipment. You're choosing the command center for your home's entire energy future. So, now that you know what to look for, which brain is the right one for your system?